Welcome to our show this week. You know, as writing has evolved and technology has helped us tremendously in our path to becoming writers, it is ultimately the storytelling elements that make writing what it is. And we've evolved as writers. The more words you write, the better you become. So we're going to talk about the lessons that we've learned here as writers. And we're going to do so with an incredible roundtable discussion panel. Then CL Cannon will be along with another great indie connection as she travels in these dark endeavors to bring you some more spooky reads. And in the final 5 minutes, we spend it in the human cycle with Mr. JD Estrada. So sit back, grab a cup of coffee, and enjoy this and more with your host, Joe Compton, for This Week in Indies. Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Week in Indies as I give you a sneak preview of the panel. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I'm a little out of practice here, and the funny thing is that I give her the day off, and she's here. Hi, Madeline. Nice to see you. That's awesome that you're here, though. We appreciate that. Anita's here. Margaret's here. JD's breaking the fourth wall. Welcome to the show. It's so nice to have you all here and present with us today. We have a great panel for you. We're going to talk a little bit about our evolution as writers and all of that fun stuff. But I first wanted to bring about, you notice my hat here. It says Our American Family. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this incredible film and what's going on with it tonight. If you're interested, American Family is the story as addiction is an all-encompassing force. It is not only the lives of the afflicted, but those around them. Our American Family provides an honest and unfiltered look at a close-knit Philadelphia family dealing with generational substance abuse. Captured at a pivotal nothing-to-lose moment for over a course of a year, 5 family members tired of life with addiction on center stage, each struggle to transcend their crippling histories. What will it take to shift this entrenched, wrenching pattern in their lives? Will they be able to make significant shifts to help their next generation? The members of American Family invite us all into their lives to find hope and explore what's possible. Though they often falter, their familial loyalty is powerful, demonstrating and how through love and dedication people can rise out of the deepest depths. For a touching, eye-opening look into one of America's most pressing crises, look no further. Winner of the Woodstock Film Festival Award for Audience's Best Documentary Feature, Our American Family, which is directed by Haley Adelman and Sean King O'Grady and executive produced by Caroline Labresco, will be making its premiere tonight at on the Sundance TV channel at 10:30 Eastern Time. Just timed and right in line with National Substance Abuse Prevention Month. And immediately following the film is a Can We Talk About This panel discussion hosted by Jordan Carlos, featuring Nika King, who's an actress from Euphoria, and Moshe Kaiser, a comedian and author. The film is also available on VOD as of right this moment. It's called Our American Family. And like I said, it'll be premiering tonight on the Sundance TV channel. So everybody go check that out. And if you are so inclined and want to continue to learn more about this film, we did a spotlight episode about it just a few weeks ago, where I sat down with Haley and Sean and talked all about their film and what it was all about. So everybody can go check that out. The link is actually in the description right now. And so as everybody fuddles with their microphones, and you can hear that in the background, I will bring aboard the wonderful, wonderful panel that we have here for you. And Madeline says we can't get rid of her.
We
David
tried.
is breaking the fourth wall. And JD acknowledges how far we've come through fabled passages. A relevant promotional moment. I love that. And Madeline says y'all do a great job at breaking the fourth wall. It's a week in indies. Yes, it is. It is a week in indies. Nice. Everybody's here. Everybody's commenting. I love it. Welcome to the show. And welcome to my panel. Well, it's nice to have you all here, familiar faces as they are. And let's go around the horn before we get to yapping and yap a little bit about each other. So, David, take it away. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, sir.
Hi, thanks for having me on again. Always a pleasure. I'm David Green. I am from Manchester in the UK, but I am also Irish, and I live in Ireland at the moment in Galway. So I'm just across the water from America. I am the author of the Empire of Ruin series, which is an epic fantasy, which currently has In Solitude Shadow, which is book 1, and book 2, Path of War. I also do an urban fantasy series called Hell in Haven, and I am often to be found with Ron for some reason.
Connected at the hip, you know. And there may be or may not be, I don't want to spoil a surprise, a little look into David Green's urban fantasy series on the wonderfully timed show Mean Reviews. We'll maybe see that down the road if Ron is so inclined to, give it attention and all. And we were talking off the air, discovering that in where David lives, there's no Uber or Lyft, everybody. How about that?
But you can walk across the entire country in an afternoon.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. That is
escort.
Right. It comes with its, being in a tiny, tiny little green country comes with its perks sometimes.
Yeah, I would say so. All right. Speaking of perks, we're perked right up with Mr. Jim Nettles. Hello, sir.
Who's supposed to be perky?
I don't know.
I'm still trying to recover from last weekend and the fact that South Carolina took out Texas A&M last night. So I am Jim Nettles. I write science fiction, urban fantasy, a bit of horror, a bit of this, that, and the other. Write a bunch of nonfiction as well. I am the founder for Author Essentials, where we teach, business and stuff like that for creative folks. I am one of the founders of Continual Convention, where we do a bunch of cool stuff like this and get to play with Joe like we did last weekend. And I am the business dean for the Speculative Fiction Academy.
Outstanding. You got that down to a crisp 35 seconds, sir. I love it.
Look, give me it's been a long week. It was a long game last night. I'm just...
All right. And welcome. Look, everybody. Ron Lars here. Unbelievable.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Lar. It's so nice to have you. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, if you would.
I would love to. I write science fiction, fantasy, humor. I host Mean Reviews, No Stars Given, here on Going Now Network. And I'm filling in fairly last minute for Alexander Gideon, so I wanted to say in his honor, my style is best described as, and many people were sarcastic.
Nice.
And then my personal style would be best described as fancy farmer.
Nice. And Madeline wanted to say she's still exhausted from multiverse, and meeting other versions of herself would be exhausting. Yes. Ha ha ha.
All of mine are smart-assed.
I know. Very nice. And Margaret said my time zone, so how she could be a smartass at this early in the morning, who knows? But that's awesome.
She wakes up at 4 or something.
Yeah. I'm always up, so it doesn't matter. I'm up around that time too. Speaking of up, look at who we've got.
Books. We've got books. Books. Greetings, fellow humans. My name is JD Estrada. I won't be as succinct or brief as Jim, or as eloquent and snarky as Ron, but I will do my best. I am the author of 19 books. That includes urban fantasy, middle grade poetry, nonfiction, and a partridge in a pear tree. If you're so inclined to get something spooky for Halloween, by all means, get my Rhymes from the Wicked Nursery. It's kind of messed up, kind of fun, worthy of the Addams Family Library. I'm also the author of The Human Cycle. Part of what I'll be doing later on is talking about that, and to break the fourth wall even more. Wow, wait. Now I got it. So yeah, those are urban fantasy novels that have vampires. Therians, don't call them werewolves. The vampires do not sparkle, by the way. There are angels and demons, and a lot of interesting looks into the humanity of everything.
It's like that picture on Instagram that everybody takes when they're in like a corporate bathroom, and it's like they take a picture of their phone and it's like 40 bathrooms behind them, the same mirror behind them, holding up the book.
That's where I'm denting. Yeah, that's where I'm just like denting the fifth wall.
There we go. That's pretty close.
Yeah, close enough. It's as close as we're going to get this morning. All right. And last but certainly never least, the awesome Deborah Parmalee. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself. You're muted, by the way. So.
Okay, there we go. Thanks, Joe. All right, I'm Deborah Parmalee. I'm a multi-genre author, and I'm also I guess you'd call me a mobile author because I live in a motorhome full time and we travel about. I'm today coming to you from Lake Cumberland, Kentucky, from my mother-in-law's house because the RV is still in the shop. So I've got a good internet connection and happy about that. Gosh, as far as books go, I'm trying to think. I think there's about 25 of them up on Amazon. And if you go to Goodreads, because the out-of-print ones show up there, it's over 30-something. I kind of don't keep up with that so much. And I've written in several different genres, most known for military romantic suspense, but also short stories, poetry. So not just multi-genre, but multi, what format and type of book. So a little bit of everything. I'm a Gemini. We like doing that.
Nice. That's awesome. And the chat is chatty as always. 4 is way too early. Depends on what you're looking at. It is, but last 2 nights have been good sleep though, so I think I may have broken the pattern up at 6:30, which is much more reasonable. And Maddie agrees. I'm sure a lot of people would not agree that 6:30 is reasonable, but we'll, I would. I don't. Like I said, I don't sleep, so it doesn't matter to me. Maybe aiming to go early for Nano, but we'll see. I love sleep, and her voice is sunshine. And looking directly into the camera in an infinite mirror hallway is breaking the 2nd, 4th, and 5th walls. And Deborah, Kentucky. All right, there we go. I think I got through them all. All right. Hello. I'm a little out of practice. Well, actually, I'm not out of practice. I've been streaming all weekend, so there's no excuse for me. But welcome to the show, and let's talk about. I'm kind of curious to start this conversation out. When you started this journey, what was your expectation? If you so inclined would like to be honest and tell everybody your silly expectation, because I had one. But still, your expectation of what it was going to be like as a writer, and how quickly you realized how incredibly wrong you were.
Wrong?
I heard the phrase that it takes 10 years to become an overnight sensation. I'm not going to deliver on that because 10 years is going to be, since I started, this is going to be next year. And I'm not a sensation, but I've done things the way that I wanted to. I thought it was going to be not easier, just less intense in certain aspects and more intense in others. And just the reality of it all has been very different. I knew that I wanted to publish a lot of things. I've delivered on that, not as much as Deborah. But publishing exactly what I wanted because I wanted it was really high on my list, and there have been no F's given, and I have published everything that I wanted, and more is on the way.
All right. So I would say from a nonfiction standpoint, because I've written way more of that, it's the uphill slog, and a lot of it's media, and a lot of it is just keeping stuff going, keeping stuff moving, keeping stuff going out. You don't really necessarily look at that because, again, from a writer standpoint, for a lot of that was to supplement or to help tie into everything else I do. But from a fiction standpoint, I kind of came into it with, all right, let's see what happens. I started writing more for my own, insanity, keeping my insanity. I was having fun with it. Then it started working. It started selling. It started taking off more. and that then became everything else that I'm tied up in the middle of. So it's one of those things of walking into it with expectations. Setting goals is one thing, and my goals were fairly low starting into it, and frequently I've managed to achieve those low goals. But coming into it as a exploratory, hey, I'm just going to go do this and have fun, and everything I've been able to do with it has been definitely a gift.
So my intro into the writing world was very different in two different phases in the early days. I went to get an English lit degree, and at the time I had poetry published in lit journals, and they had a competition there. Lambda Iota Tau had a writing competition. I was the first student at the university to get first place in two categories, creative and then sort of like a memoir was the other category. So at the time, I'm having success at all three. And I had absolutely no mentoring on that at all. I wanted direction, which way should I go? No one would tell me. So I thought, well, okay. So I graduate with the degree, and then it's like, well, now what? So I was writing short stories, had one of those published, was up for a Darrell Award with my first short story. And it was in an anthology, More Monsters from Memphis. So that was meant to be horror, but it was a vampire story. So romance was in there with it. And again, no mentoring. I had a TV interview and a radio interview, and it's like, whoa, okay. So fast forward a little bit, I finally wrote my first novel back in, it was 2006, I think, when the contest was out. Dorchester Publishing and Romantic Times Magazine put on this contest, 10 of us competing for one publishing contract from Dorchester, which meant any of us could have been published. And agents wanted us. I got an agent pretty quick during that. And I had to have a website before I even had a book out. So every time I tried to enter the writing world, big things would happen. And then I had no mentoring. So I'm flying by the seat of my pants there. Then I started to get the mentoring. And then, of course, people have opinions, and everything is based on what they know or what someone has told them. And it's really only until now, turning indie, then I've been able to take the reins back and say, okay, hey, I didn't start out with the mentoring. Now, I do need some mentoring once in a while, but as far as driving this ship, I'm the captain. So that's how it goes now.
Go on, Ron. You can go first. I'll be a gentleman.
Well, thank you. You're very sweet. So I started writing in high school because I was just so fucking funny, and I had to share that with the world. And I got a lot of attention, positive attention for that from fellow students and teachers. And so, I loved attention, and I love people telling me I'm great. That's fun. But when I started trying to get a book published in the 80s, that was a long process at the time, and very annoying. Promising agents that they could have the book for 6 months and nobody else would look at it. I was like, it's going to be 100 years before I get anywhere. And then I had kids, so I stopped writing. And coming back, recently, when being an indie author was an option, has been much more satisfying. But definitely not what I envisioned as a young person, being a traditional author would be like.
So yeah, I'm probably the newest to this world that's on the show at the moment. I've only been published writing for the last 2 years, really. And my goal was going into it, if I had one, was basically I just wanted to have one thing published, if that was in an anthology or whatever, just so I could show my son when he was older. That's all I wanted to do. So I started doing that, and I thought that it would be a really kind of like, because I'd heard it can be such a long process for anyone, and there's lots of rejection, especially the anthology kind of game. And it happened quite quickly, and I just kept on going and kept on writing short stories and getting quite a lot of stuff published until I started working on my own stuff on novels and everything. So I didn't really kind of come in with any kind of expectations at all, other than that it was going to be really, really hard to do. And I just kind of learned a lot as I was going on, because I had no real understanding of anything really. And with that in mind, like with my first thing that I wrote, I got picked up by an independent press, which was great, because I would have had no idea how to do any of the other stuff that comes with self-publishing at the time, like designing covers, formatting, editing, all of the kind of publicity afterwards, advertising, all that kind of stuff. Like I wouldn't have had a clue, and I still don't. So that was a good thing. But then the other side of it then is the more I've kind of focused on just writing novels, and thanks very much, Maddie. Thank you. The more I've just started writing on my own novels and everything like that, and the series that I work on, is the pace of it. I know with self-publishing, I could have things out a lot quicker than what I currently do, because you are with a publisher and you have to kind of wait your turn basically, and you have to wait until they're free and they've got the bandwidth to kind of deal with your stuff, which can be frustrating sometimes, because part of the whole indie market is that kind of getting quality but quantity out as well. And that is one of the things that if I kind of knew a little bit more, and anyone who is kind of still looking at publishing the first stuff and they're looking at like traditional or independent press or self-publishing, one of those things about having to kind of work with other people and getting sort of into a queue and go at someone else's pace is something that I would have kind of had a longer think about, I think, at the time, because like this year, for example, I'll probably just have one book published, but I've written 5, and so next year I think I'm going to have 6 books published, which sounds crazy because it's just completely just out of, there's no kind of real it looks like there's no method to it. So if you are someone who wants to kind of control a lot more of what of your output is, then that's something to kind of consider, which I would have liked to have known a couple of years ago.
All right, so I'm going to be the lone dissenter in this conversation and probably the asshole of the bunch. Because the moment that I got out of the theater for the first time in my life, when I got to go to a movie, and then standing in line and watching everybody going to the same movie I was going to, I decided right then and there that that's what I wanted to do with my life. And the first thing I ever wrote, before I ever wrote anything in a screenplay or a novel, was my Academy Award acceptance speech. And I, at 10 years old, had a goal sheet or a dream sheet or whatever you want to call it, or vision board or whatever, that at this point in my life where I am right now, I am 49 years old. Well, I will be 49 years old in December. That I would have had 22 Academy Awards, broken all the records, and a few Stoker Awards thrown in there because, novelists at the time were just novelists. I never expected that ever I would, as a novelist, be making any money. I was always going to be the Hollywood darling. So, which I am darling, but but other than that, that was my expectation. That was my first thought. And then I wrote a screenplay and realized, boy, this is fucking hard. And then I made a movie and I realized, what the fuck was I thinking? Because that is really fucking hard. And then I wrote a book thinking, well, I can just get back on the horse and write a book and I'll be okay. And then I sold, I don't know, 12 copies, 6 of them to my neighbors. The first week I was out as a published author, and realized, holy shit, I have to work to sell this. Oh my God, So, yes, I had lofty expectations of myself, and none of them came true. But boy, has the journey been awesome, and I've learned a lot along the way. And I'm very, very grateful for that, including that these 5 people down here are all lying to you because they all had the same dream.
No, okay. Dreams and aspirations. The thing is that I always thought, like, this is going to be an uphill battle. So I went into it with that mindset, stuff that I want, and I still want. It's not that I used to want it. It's like, well, you know what it is. I'll get there because I'm stubborn enough. You have to be stubborn for the good stuff. People are stubborn for like shitty stuff. It's like you have to be stubborn for the good stuff. I will help write a video game. What video game? I'm not sure, because as I keep playing stuff, what I connect with and what resonates changes. And from going to wanting to do an RPG, now it's like I want something that when people play it, it's like an experience that they don't quite understand, but it has an impact in their life. In terms of movies, I really, really need to see adaptations of my movies. Given to Fly, I want this to be a Studio Ghibli film. Come on, that's what you see this cover and it's like it's a Studio Ghibli film. What I want to do, I really wish that I could live off my books. I really wish that I could do book tours and also play music at those events. Why in those events? Because I know that I'm not going to get a beer thrown at me or a quarter tossed at me. There's no guarantees about the quarter. And maybe some protester who reads my books and goes like, "Oh, this agnostic asshole, we have to ban him." And they'll throw, actually, if you're gonna throw a beer in my face, make it an IPA, please.
Eddie, we've got to improve your taste.
No, I've always liked an IPA. And you basic bitch, this is a pumpkin spice rooibos tea that I'm having, and I do not care. I will embrace it. Do I want to make my own tea blend? Hell yes. Do I want to make an animated version of Double O Bananas or a video game? Hell yes. Do I want all those things? Yes, but I know that stuff needs to align, and it's just been very slow going. And it's slow going because when you have a day job I've had several day jobs while I've been writing that have been soul crushing. And if they're not soul crushing, they're demanding. So you go like, okay, well, I want to pay the bills. And then you see what people have to go through in events to break even. And that's when you go like, shit, how am I going to do this? So it's like a constant reevaluation. Am I going to still do this? Yeah. Will it take a little longer? It's going to take a lot longer, but I don't care. It'll still keep going.
Well, now if we're this is a different question. Do I have goals and aspirations and shit I want to stir up now? Yes. Are those different? Absolutely. But I mean, starting out, it was like all right, this was more of time to strip and run into battle and see what the hell happens. Now it's very much about, okay, I've got my hands in a lot of different moving pieces and a lot of different pies and commitments, and I want to see success come out of that. And how I'm defining success these days for this is a bit different. I mean, because yes, is it part of me making a living? Absolutely, it already is. Is it part of doing a lot of things? Yes. And this is what's also led to me now looking and going, there's things that I would like to do creatively and play with, or do and build and write and all this other fun stuff. And unfortunately, there seems to only be this limitation of 24 hours in a day. And there still seems to be some sort of weird restriction about that, even though I keep trying to dent the fifth wall, and it's just not working. But do I have goals? Do I have things I want to do? Absolutely. And I'm keep trying to shift and change everything in my life to be able to work towards those. But again, there's a certain degree of, no, not yet. It will.
There's always it depends. We can get sponsoring from Depends at this rate.
You don't?
Not yet. Not yet.
You see, I don't have any goals anymore anyway, because I had 2 goals, and one of them was to be the champion of Indie Mayhem Season 1. which I was.
Failure.
And the second one was to be the two-time host of Mean Reviews, which I am going to achieve this week. So, I've achieved everything that I set out to achieve. Whatever else happens from now on.
Thanks for spoiling our surprise, David.
Well, I will say though that I do make people's dreams come true.
That's exactly right. That's what I was trying to say.
Dreams and nightmares are not exactly the same thing, Ron.
I argue they are.
You smashed that goal. There you go.
I did.
Yeah. Your arch nemesis is speaking. Are you like Bob? Has she become your arch enemy?
She's too nice to be my enemy, which is she did pay me to say that. But I was like the phoenix.
Strong armed you.
She did, yeah. My victory was all the sweeter because I was like the phoenix from the flames after my defeat in the opening round, and then it was I'm not exaggerating when I say it was the greatest achievement of my life.
All right. I think we should just drop the mic there. I mean,
great show, everybody.
Better than that.
All right,
Deborah,
in the last 5 minutes,
please. Deborah, save us, please. Oh, you're muted again.
No, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. All right. I was trying to think back to where my mindset was when I started, which takes a minute. But because I started before indie was around, I didn't have control. Authors didn't have control. You had control over nothing, not your cover, not your promo, nothing. You had your agent, you had your editor. They had the control. You did not. So we weren't expected to think about more than just the book, basically. So my big thing back then was, well, I just need to write it and finish it and put it out there. And I want as many people to read it as possible. That was my big thing. And they were in control of whether I would do well or not. So that was a young mindset also. And the world then was different than our author world is today. But I do think that for a brand new author, or any kind of writer, if you don't look into the world of authoring a little bit, you might be in that mindset even today, because you haven't experienced it, so you can't really know. So unless you have a mentor, which is key, and if you don't, you're going to be in that dreamy mindset of all the magic things will happen when the book comes out. Now, add that to the fact that I was in a national contest where you've got people saying, oh, yeah, great, great, great. You've got people coming from all around the world to your website, which is super exciting. I like that part. Still with no real mentoring as far as what next. Well, when you get the book contract and the book is coming out, then what? And that magical thinking of when I get the book out, then all of the great things will happen. Well, everything in your regular life is going to stay the same because that's not changed. So it's not the magic abracadabra for you. So magical thinking happens a lot with brand new writers. You can still have it today. I just shifted one of my major goals. I used to say, and I've said it ever since I wrote the first short story, when I hit the New York Times list, I want to buy a beach house and write on the beach. Okay, so I just spent last summer living on a sandbar. I found a way to live on the beach. Not much writing got done. I found out I don't want to buy a house on the beach because, hurricanes and stuff, plus the sandbar, the sands shift and move constantly. So it was a real awakening experience. Now, had I talked to someone that actually lived that way, I would have known. So comparing that to the whole author world, if you have a mentor that can talk to you about things, even if they're not giving you advice, if they just share a little bit about their life, what's it really like? I think that's important because otherwise we're all in magical thinking. Because if we haven't talked to someone that's done it or experienced it, we have no way of knowing. So I think that's a real important thing, no matter where you are in your author career, to do that. And I'm talking to someone now about going wider with my books, because I still have that initial goal of wanting as many people to read the books as possible. And there are ways to do that I hadn't considered that they're telling me about. So you can always keep learning and growing, but you've got to find somebody that's doing what you want to do and just talk to them. That's the key there, I think.
So
I think
Deborah's being very, very nice. So I won't say what I was going to say before, but actually I am, because I'm an asshole. But so I basically, what you mentioned, Deborah, about your life doesn't change. My whole aspect was that as soon as I become a filmmaker, I'm gonna get me some famous friends, dump all the friends I have, ignore my family, and get into a nice little habit of drugs and drinking and partying. That was always my thought process behind. That was my evolution, was going up that way, and of course that's stupid. But
there's high goals and there's getting high goals. So
Rock and roll would have been easier to get that lifestyle. You could have been
Yeah,
a
and you were-
bassist.
yeah, if
You
I
were
had
10.
any, I didn't have any singing talent or playing talent whatsoever, so that wasn't going to happen. So
And you came up with this plan at 10 years old?
yes,
That is very impressive.
thank you.
I just have to say.
Now your turn, Ron.
I mean, yes, I assumed, based on the reaction I got from my teachers and fellow students in high school, that I would be, supremely famous and successful. But I only planned on ignoring the family members I didn't like, not all of them. I mean, and I wanted to keep my friends. I had some run-ins with famous people when I was younger that didn't impress me, so I never thought, oh, I want to be friends with famous people. I didn't think very highly of a lot of famous people. So, but regardless, like you, I haven't won any Academy Awards yet or achieved any of the tremendous. Yeah, I haven't given up. I still have a few good years left, I think.
And I think
I realized what kind of bullshit it is. But
Well, but see, Ron has a built-in audience every time he gives his award acceptance speech to the chickens and
The goats.
the goats.
the goats, the greatest of all time. Come on. I think one of the challenges with finding a proper mentor, I've never found a mentor in my professional career or my writing career, in any sort of thing, because a lot of people want to have that dynamic where they're the Jedi Master and you're the Padawan, and you must follow exactly what I say. And to me, that's an automatic no, and it's an automatic go screw yourself. Because I'm not. Some people come up at conventions, they're like, "Dude, you made it," and I'm like, "What does that mean?" Not really. I enjoy this. Love your enthusiasm. Let's bring it down a notch because it's a long weekend. And some people come like, how did you do it? And I'm like, how did I do what? How did I write a book? That's a question. How did I get an event? That's another question. How did I make it? Define make it. I can't pay you, and when inflation even less, I can't pay for groceries with my royalties, much less make a living. So is that a goal that I want? Have I made it? No. But still, finding someone that, finding someone that is scary. Someone that no bullshit and be honest and answer the questions that you have. And I've asked some of you some questions, and I will be asking more questions just because I want to take it to the next step, whatever that means for me. The thing is that the next step for me is not the next step for you or the next step for Deborah or David or Jim or Ron or Joe or anyone. So you have to be clear with that. And the 10 steps that you have to follow about whatever. Okay, 3 of those apply to you. The other 7 you can toss in the trash.
Well,
and I was referring to the comment about it
Yeah.
being scary, not what JD was saying. JD is right on, but yeah. All right, so we do have a question from the chat, and it's a really great question actually from Margaret, and it says, "What about expectations? I find myself still fighting, faking myself out, trying not to have them based on lessons learned, brain learned, heart hasn't." How about that?
I think it's good to have expectations, but I think you need to manage them at the same time as well. So not to have wild expectations of things. And I think that the most important part, I think, from that is where Margaret mentions the lessons learned. So I think every single book that you release from the starting process, from the idea you have to it to when it's written, to when it's been published, to after it's been launched and everything like that, is you take all of that into your next one and learn from it. And it's not just about writing a better book or making a better product. It's about how do you make it more successful than the last one. And it's setting your expectations in line with that. And I think there's no harm in every time you release a book of having greater expectations, because I think it's worth challenging yourself and looking to do better, and having those expectations of yourself because you have learned more. But it's just making sure that your expectations aren't like, you might compare yourself, as JD was saying, comparing yourself with other people that they may have been on the same kind of trajectory as you, and then they've released a book and it's gone wildly successful, or something big has happened, then you think, well, okay, well, when I do that on my fourth or fifth or sixth book or whatever, that will happen to me. That isn't always the case. There's other reasons for that. It might be the particular genre that they're in. It might be an approach that they took. It might just be the right release at the right time. So I think with expectations, it's manage them. Don't compare yourself to other people. And I think if you're talented enough and you work hard enough and you are trying to challenge yourself and improve all the time, and you are learning lessons, then some success, not maybe not New York Times bestseller list success, but some success will come to you if you keep plugging away at it.
You never know.
As usual, I disagree with David.
What you kind of realize about all that is it's superficial and arbitrary anyway. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to say, but it's like, what does it really do for you? It doesn't do much more than you. It just means that you've made money doing it a little bit, and that doesn't. And sometimes that doesn't even matter, because especially with New York Times bestsellers, as we've heard and learned, and this is rumor, unsubstantiated, so New York Times don't come after me. But you can pay to become a New York Times bestseller too. So.
Oh, absolutely. That's
right.
not
Yeah.
rumor. And I mean, there's services you can go buy that. That's
there's ways to get it as well. Like there's ways to get it as well. Like you can, there's anthologies are a good route, and it depends what your goals are. Like if you want to do it, like I'm a Amazon #1 bestseller. I got an orange tag for something. It doesn't really mean anything. I'm not living off royalties from the thing, right? It just had a successful launch that weekend, and it was good, right? And then it doesn't matter at the end of the day. But it's all relative. So it's the next challenge is to make that launch better and to last for a longer time than the one that I had before. That's the way you have to kind of look at it.
And Joe, I think this kind of goes to, ping me offline. I'll tell you. And I can tell you the people that'll do it. And I think this goes back to one of the things we talked about last week on the business panel was it's not about expectations. There's actually a process to get there. Is decide what your goals are. And having an actual goal, not an expectation. Have an actual goal, create a plan and a way to get there, and then create the expectation you're going to achieve the goal based on the plan if you step through that. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, then don't look at it as you didn't meet your expectations, you didn't meet your goal. Look at it and learn from what happened. And I think going back to Deborah's point, mentors are great, but there's always somebody ahead of you and there's always somebody behind you. And there's in everything, and being able to work with people and learn with people and teach people is way more important than going and saying, do I have the Jedi Master?
Yeah. All right, Ron, you wanted to say something? Sorry, we cut you off in there. I apologize.
Oh, no, I mean, yes, I did want to say something, but it wasn't a big deal. I was just going to say that, as usual, I disagree with David. And I find my jealousy and spite for more successful authors to be a great motivator.
You're so bitter. You're so
You should see the messages. You should see the messages that he sends me on a daily basis. They're terrifying and terrible in equal measure.
Yeah.
Speaking of terrifying and messages and all of those wonderful things and expectations, we have a great indie connection for you. So enjoy it, everybody, and we'll be right back as CL Cannon goes into her spooky tober and brings you another great book with a lot of great indies behind it.
Hey guys, CL Cannon here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you are a fan of This Dark Endeavor by Kenneth Oppel. The first book I have for you is called The Monsters We Deserve by Marcus Sedgwick. Do monsters always stay in the book where they were born? Are they content to live out their lives on paper and never step foot into the real world? The Villa Diodati on the shore of Lake Geneva, 1816, the year without summer. As Byron, Polidori, and Mr. and Mrs. Shelley shelter from the unexpected weather, old ghost stories are read, and new ghost stories imagined. Born by the twin brains of the Shelleys is Frankenstein, one of the most influential tales of horror of all time. In a remote mountain house, high in the French Alps, an author broods on Shelley's creation. Reality and perception merge, fueled by poisoned thoughts. Humankind makes monsters, but who really creates who? This is a book about reason, the imagination, and the creative act of reading and writing. The second book I have for you is called Victoria Frankenstein by A.E. Alexander. The story you know, with a twist. Victoria Frankenstein uses her scientific talent to do the unthinkable, create life. But when she sees the horrible thing that her years of toil produced, she flees, the beauty of her dream replaced with disgust. Not even her best friend Harriet or her betrothed Elias can distract Victoria from what she has done. And when her own sister is inexplicably murdered, she realizes she's living a nightmare. The creature is out for revenge and won't stop until Victoria, and everyone dear to her, is destroyed. The third book I have for you is called Gossamer and Thorns by L. Beaumont. To save the love of his life, a nobleman is willing to risk anything. Christophe Severin is a young lord who studies botany. But when his father needs his assistance in the taboo art of reanimating life, he has no option but to help. In a world ravaged by ironbark disease, a fatal illness, Christophe's father is obsessed with finding a way to imbue life into automatons. However, all Christophe longs for is a cure. Willing to do whatever it takes to ensure the one who holds the key to his heart survives the disease, Chris must venture down a dark and twisted path. If he cannot save his love from the disease, he fears losing her means dooming himself too. And the last book I have for you is called Faraday and Frankenstein by Stacy Anderson Lasht. In 1867, Michael Faraday, well beyond his years of meaningful contribution to the electrical sciences, considers one final secret experiment, an experiment inspired by the novel Frankenstein. Convinced that resurrection is possible if only enough electrical power can be generated, Faraday travels to St. Louis, Missouri, a growing city on the Mississippi River, in order to use the thousands of miles of continuous flowing water as a powerful conduit for generating enormous amounts of electricity. Once he has set up his laboratory, Faraday begins to have doubts. He misses his wife. He feels limited by his advanced age. He fears failure will ruin his reputation. He fears success will lead others to replicate his methods for evil intentions. His strong religious morals conflict with his scientific curiosity. But a scientist's curiosity wins over any doubt and fear. Faraday conducts the experiment and despairs in the consequences that follow. Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
Thanks again to an awesome indie connection by the awesome CL Cannon. That Faraday and Frankenstein book, that was a creepy AF cover. It was fantastic looking. And she says, all of these books sound amazing. Might as well put something down in the 1,000 block of the to be read list. Yep, Might and right, Eugene? Yep. It never stops growing. Yes. You know what else doesn't stop growing? Us as artists. Woohoo, look at that transition. we continue to grow, and I also want to put this out there, Margaret. Without dreams, some of us wouldn't reach success. I love that. That's so beautiful, Deborah. But yeah, I just think we are growing, and every time we write more words, we grow, and we acknowledge that. And like we've been saying, we parry, we kind of mirror our expectations to our dreams, and we have dreams and goals and all of those wonderful things. But I wanted to, before we took off here and said goodbye, and yes, JD mentioned privately in our chat that this was probably a 2-hour conversation we needed to have. But that being said, we do only have the time that we have. So let's talk a little bit about, because people are here not to hear about all of us, but let's talk a little bit about what you see out there and what you hear from younger authors that, what is something that you've learned that you pass on to younger authors when they ask you about what should I expect? Is there something out there that you've kind of gleamed that you can see that younger authors maybe don't understand? And not by younger authors, I don't mean young kids. I mean, obviously, people just starting out. But is there something out there that you can point to that you go, you know what? Let me just give you this right now so that you have this nugget of truth.
Learn to love rejection.
There you go. That's a beautiful one, actually.
If I gave you one pro tip hi, Jonathan. If I gave you one pro tip, if you're starting out, try to get the same handle across all platforms. That is something that a lot of people. Fortunately, I was like, I just want to make it easy for myself, and luckily that thinking saved me a lot of headaches. It's because I can say just look for JD Estrada Writer at YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. That's you're gonna have to do social at some point. That is one of the few things that I will go like, you know what? I think you should do this. If you want to do your own thing, do your own thing. But it's helped me a lot.
My advice to new writers is don't write shit.
Well, who knows? There's an audience for everything, Ron.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they write shit too, you've got me reviews. So there you go.
That's true, but sometimes it's just too cruel. I mean, I read a book by an indie author, and this author had so much trouble stringing together one sentence in English that I assumed English was not their first language. And I asked him, I sent him a message. I'm like, so I'm assuming English isn't your first language. They were quite offended. And it turned out they had paid a lot of money to different editors on this book. I mean, it was stunning because there wasn't, I swear, not a single sentence that was grammatically correct. And it was so confusing. I don't know. Don't write a book like that. Later, I'll tell you guys all who it was.
Ron, it was me. I know. It was.
Yeah, I still haven't forgiven you for that feedback, Ron, to be honest with you.
I think we were all thinking the same thing because I was going to say the exact same thing. Thanks for pointing me out.
You guys
Ron.
would not claim it if you had read this book. Oh, well.
One of the things I kind of learned was I think there's great value to getting into the anthology game, especially if you're starting off, and to learning your craft and finding your voice by doing short stories. But I think there's little value to new writers sinking a lot of time into places that don't pay, and you're basically essentially giving them your work for nothing, and buying the books off them because you're like, I want to see my own work, so you're essentially paying them to publish work. Because for a number of things, again, I think it's always worthwhile practicing and writing things and experimenting and everything. But there are other places, and as Jim said, that rejection is a good thing sometimes, and places that have a higher standard and have a higher threshold generally would pay as well. And if you are getting rejections from these kind of places, they usually give you reasons that you can kind of work on as well. A lot of these places that take work for nothing will accept a lot of stuff. There's the threshold is quite low. If you are rejected, it's usually without reason as well. And I think a lot of new writers can kind of get trapped in a circle of, well, my work is good because it keeps getting accepted by these places, and it's getting published, and I'm in 10 anthologies a year or whatever, but they're making no progress and no money and getting no readership either, which is the key thing, because the only people that are reading these books are the people that are in them. So if you are kind of starting off, really kind of do your homework on where you're sending your stuff to, and it's your work, and you want to improve, and you want to be rewarded for it in some kind of way. So be a bit protective of what you're writing and where you're sending it to.
Yeah. Read the fine print.
Learn to read a contract.
I've known the horror stories that you hear around of people that lost their intellectual property because they didn't read a contract and were just desperate to get into an anthology or get published. It's varied, and it's very disheartening, and it's very disappointing. But rather than just freak out, it should just be a lesson for you to read the contract if you're not sure what it says, because legalese is its own bullshit language. Asks for help. And really ask for help. Everyone's like, yeah, I can do everything by myself. It's like, take it down a notch. You're not an expert in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree with what JD just said, because whether it's a small press or you're indie or you're in a big house, it all comes down to the contract, and they're not all the same, even within the same house. So if you sign it, you're bound by it. So are they. It's a way you can get out of a contract if they break it. And I've done that, but I had to educate myself on these contracts because I had no agent to get out of the contracts, only one to get in. So be careful out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people, particularly on social media, that are looking for new writers to kind of exploit them with the promise of work being published or money somewhere down the line, or guaranteed sales or guaranteed reviews and all this kind of stuff.
That's their business model.
That's the business model. Yeah,
predatory. It's screwed up.
Yeah.
If somebody says, "Hi, I'm your publisher. Write me a check," the answer is no, and run.
Pay the writer. Pay the writer. Hello, pay the writer. That should be a motto. Pay the writer.
No, it's a law, actually.
The golden rule for these kind of things, that if you're giving your work away and not being paid for it, or you're being paid, or you're paying for someone to publish your work, the only people making any money out of it are the people that are publishing the book at the end of the day, and they're doing it for very, very little work at all. It's not worth the time that you sink into it, or the money.
And the desire to break through is also there, and that's something that a lot of people prey on. And it's like, if you pay me, I've literally gotten messages like, beware the DMs. If it smells a little fishy, it's very fishy. That's the rule of thumb.
If it smells like fish, it is fish.
Exactly. And if it smells like shit, it's shit. I've gotten messages where it's like, if you pay $600, $1,200, you'll get unlimited lifetime reviews and stuff like that. And if you're frustrated and you have disposable income, that's how they make their buck.
Yeah. So if you see the word guaranteed in anything, that's the one where it's like, well, this is bullshit, because nothing's guaranteed, right?
Yeah.
you can go with a traditional publisher and it's not going to be guaranteed to do well, right? There's no guarantee in anything of these kind of things. So if you see something that's like, you pay me $500 and I will guarantee that you will get this, then it's like, well, I can guarantee that I'm going to block you and never speak to you again.
And honestly, whether it's an editor or a PR company or whoever's trying to sell you something, anyone that I've ever worked with that has been good at what they do, they have a busy calendar that you have to get scheduled in, especially in the publishing world, because we work on books that are coming out next year. So their calendars are full if they're good, unless they're brand new. So if they're coming to you, and they can fit you in this week, something is wrong there. Terribly
Well, and
wrong.
the
Yeah.
one thing I will say is, and Joe is tired of hearing me say this, it's remembering the fact that this is a business. You own a business. If you're going to be a writer, you have to run it like a business. You have to be able to separate the, oh yeah, this is my, this is my baby. This is my creative work. This is, I've poured my heart, life, soul, blah, 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 blah into it. And now I got to figure out how to go sell it. And that part of remembering it is a business, and there are a lot of other businesses you're going to deal with around the rest of the industry, has to be a big influence in how you operate. And that's one of the biggest things too.
And you can always ask an experienced author, hey, have you heard of this company? And they'll tell you straight, because they, no matter what they're doing, what genre they are in, how far along they are in their career, they do not mind. None of us mind saying, hey, no, I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole. I'll do it. I'll tell them. Feel free to email me if you have questions.
There you go. Margaret says, I guess I'm trying to figure out what risks I can graduate to taking up at this point. And JD, that whole invest angle. Yeah. Look, my one thing I would tell young writers, and I do often, is find your tribe. They're out there. Find the people that you can talk to about writing, relate to, and give your stuff to, and feedback, people who are willing to give you feedback. There's a lot of us out there, and we're here to keep everything going. I mean, that's what we understand, that that it's a solitary exercise in writing sometimes, and you feel sometimes alone, and there's a lot of introverts out there, and they feel like they're being told that they have to be extroverted to make it in this business, and all those things. And there's an introvert tribe out there who can help you navigate all that, and there's people out there that can help you, and you just got to find the right people to do that. And yeah, that takes time, and that's a really tough journey, but it's worth it at the end of the day, I think, because I think it's invaluable to have people you trust and people that you can talk to about all this stuff. We were just at Multiverse, and a lot of us, half of us were at Multiverse, and there's some people in the chat that were at Multiverse. And one of the things that happened at the closing ceremonies, one of the feedbacks that was given was that there was this thing that we did, was called the Writers Workshop, where we had a bunch of young writers, or writers trying something else out, maybe somebody who's not a young writer, but somebody who was trying a new genre or something like that, and they needed feedback on what they were doing. So they submitted 3 or 4 pages, and then had 3 or 4 published authors critique their work and talk about their work and give them some feedback and help them out. And somebody chimed up and said, don't let that go away. That's a really valuable service that this con provides. I think most cons do that too. There's a lot of cons that have blue pencil cafes and have opportunities for you to meet other writers. I mean, going to conventions is one of those ways to do that, but I think that's, you can do it online just as easily. And you can find, that's one of the great benefits of being a writer at this time, is you can find your tribe without ever leaving the house, and you can sit in your underwear and find your tribe, although that's kind of weird, but you can still do that. And I think it's out there. So that's my advice. So, Madeline says, you all brought my extrovert out of my introvert. There you go. And this is a great, I was going to mention this too. Anita said, Writer Beware is a good resource to sort through some of the scammers. Yeah. And then Deborah breaking the fourth wall said, I still look things up on Writer Beware, though. I can usually tell by the language used. Yeah, you figure that out pretty quickly, who's a scammer and who's not. Although they do, some of them are very good at and skilled at what they do. But first page critique at the author tube, right? Yeah, great example. An awesome place to go find that. I don't know what that means, but
in terms of getting her.
Oh, extrovert out
Extrovert.
of your introvert. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And she says there might
No,
be
we hog-tied it.
Yes, there was alcohol involved, but that's all right. Hey, look, sometimes that's the best way to get it out. Get it out there. So, anyway, anybody else have anything else they want to add before we say goodbye? And
I do. I'd like to add a little something.
sure, go ahead.
Beyond the business of writing, which authors always want to know about that, but writers at any level, I think, keep this in mind. Your imagination is with you for life, the life of your career. So from starting out to, years and years later, be good to your imagination. Trust it. It's never wrong. Let it exercise that muscle. So for instance, I would not have written a novel. I was writing short stories. I got challenged to write that novel. And I thought, 100,000 words is just too much. I'm writing these short stories. I just don't know if I could do a novel, but I tried it. I did it. It worked, and look what happened. It got published. So don't let things get in the way of your imagination. If you trust your imagination and you try things and experiment with your writing, magical things can happen, and you'll have that for life.
Awesome. I think that's a good place to put a stamp on this conversation. So, Deborah, tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh, okay. DeborahParmley.com. I also, if you want to follow my travel blog, I've got Beautiful Day Traveler. It's a blog and also a YouTube channel.
Nice. All right, Mr. Lur, tell everybody where they can find you, sir.
Well, my books, you can find them at my website, cataldi.com, or of course you can find me on YouTube with Mean Reviews, No Stars Given, and Indie Mayhem.
On Tuesday nights.
Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific.
Specific time.
Yes. The best of all times.
All right. Sounds good. Everybody go check it out. And apparently we've already established who the next guest host is, but we'll talk about that in a second. All right, Mr. Nettles.
Easiest thing to do is find everything through jamesdnettles.com. You can get to authoressentials.net. You can get the SpecFic Academy, and you can, of course, get the Continual and all the stuff we're doing over there as well.
Awesome. Mr. Green.
Yeah, the best place to find me is my website, which is www.davidgreenwriter.com, and all of my links and everything are all on there.
And Tuesday night, where will you be?
In Ron's house, I think.
But he's not driving.
Are you wearing a mask, a black mask, a scream mask, and carrying a bladed?
Well, if he asks me to, I will. Yeah, he's into some weird stuff. Let's just say that.
All
Chickens,
right.
goats, yeah.
And gardening, which until now was not brought up in this conversation at all, and that's why Ron is not talking. He's upset. So
Furious. Is this not a gardening show? What happened? How did I end up here?
Anyway, welcome everybody who's never been here before, and everybody who has been here before. This is Go Indie Now. Like, subscribe, do all those wonderful things you do. I wanted to mention, though, in this time period, also tonight, if you missed it earlier, Sundance TV, go check out Our American Family, their premiere on the Sundance TV network, and with a really cool panel after the movie. So everybody go check that out. It's again Our American Family, and you can also find the movie on demand right now at your various wherever you like to stream movies at, Amazon, YouTube, wherever you like. It is available there. And if you're so inclined, go check out our Spotlight episode. If you're still not convinced to go see this movie, go check out our Spotlight episode where I interviewed Haley and Sean and talked all about it. It's very, very fun. It was a very, very good conversation and very interesting, and definitely check that out. I also wanted to mention that tonight we'll be back live. I will be back live at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific for another 21 grams. It is actually episode 6, but that's my fault, not the graphics fault. And our guest is J.K. Allen. So you definitely want to check that out. We're going to talk all about her transition from fantasy to horror and her editing prowess. on 21 Grams. So you definitely want to check that out if you're interested in and how you can multi-genre and multitask. One of the best at it is Miss Allen, and we're definitely excited to have her for that. And then tomorrow night, we're live again. Hey, look at that. 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, with the awesome Anita Stewart. AF Stewart's going to be joining us on 21 Grams, and we're going to talk all kinds of interesting things because Miss Stewart is a very interesting writer, and we've got a lot of good stuff planned for that and the week ahead, like mean reviews, character-driven. Hey, every night this week we've got something happening, so everybody go check that out. Now, without further ado, it's time for me to stop yapping and hand it over to the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, our friend and my friend and yours, the amazing JD Estrada. It is all yours, sir.
I'm gonna get me flustered. Breaking the Fourth Wall. So this is the Human Cycle. These are the first two books. Why am I reading this if I published this in 2013? Because I am actually rereading it. So this bookmark is because I am rereading it whilst I write book 3. And I realized there's a lot of stuff that I haven't gone into in terms of the human cycle. First off is my approach to vampires. Why is my approach to vampires different? Because this is not, there are vampires in the book, but it's not a vampire book. And they don't sparkle. That's the only thing that I can firmly say about my vampires. They are not homogenous. It's not cookie cutter. Everyone has their own personality. And this is the exploration of humanity through fiction, my exploration of humanity through fiction. And this started off me, I'm sitting back, watching TV, I'm chatting, listening to music, because that's what you do when you're 24. And I see an advert for Underworld, and I go like, I can write something like that. And from that dick comment came this project, which has become extremely personal. So I'm reading this. I'm putting pictures on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and anywhere that I'm at with that handle, JD Estrada Writer, which is where you can find me. I'm rereading. I'm sharing where I'm at. You can join the author as he reads his own book while he writes the third book. There is, I shall also be sharing on my YouTube channel videos about the vampires and about the planes of existence. These are two very important aspects of this series. The planes of existence, it's my interpretation of that. Think Dante's Inferno with a lot of twists and a lot of combinations of different religions and mythologies, because that's how I want to do it. When I say this is the exploration of humanity through different races and species, that means that we're going to see what it means to be human through the lens of a vampire. And trying to pick something, I've been able to talk a lot because the chapter that I picked is actually chapter 16, which is fairly well into the book already, but there's no spoilers here. And the only spoiler is that there's a character that died. It's not a big spoiler, but I realized without doing it on purpose that one of the aspects of humanity for vampires is seeing a funeral for vampires, which is something that you don't see because they're normally killed. So chapter 16, A Farewell to Claus. By the way, one of the groups, because it's covens and groups and whatever, and vampires are super inconsistent in these books on purpose. They're the Laius, and these are child vampires. If you saw Interview with the Vampire, you're familiar with the term of a child vampire, and they've matured physically and spiritually, but they're still children. So it's that aspect of it. Klaus is a member of the Laius, but he is also a member of the Magdalena group, which takes people from different groups, and it's their own little super group, call it that. So Farewell to Claus. It was near dawn. High atop the Orfanato San Jorge, 44 people stood on the rooftop while a beautifully decorated body faced towards the east. All but 3 figures were covered entirely with gold mesh tunics. Jeremy had explained to Nathaniel that it was their way of keeping the sunlight at bay. Liam, Daniel, and Nathaniel stood by the lush bed of dandelions, orchids, and yellow roses as they bid farewell to the young boy lying atop the heavenly bed of flowers. Klaus had been cleaned and dressed immaculately. He seemed like a full-grown cherub taking a sweet nap in a celestial garden. his strawberry blonde locks draped gently around his face, disregarding gravity just as they might have done when life had coursed through him. He wore a silk tunic that had 3 crests. One was for St. George, in honor of the patron saint of the orphanage. The second was a cryptic insignia of a broken heart, something the visitors had found out was the symbol for the Lias. The third was the form of a flower made up of interlocking hands, the Magdalena Christ. Across his neck was a gentle chain of heather that covered the scar of the blow that took his life. Despite the sad event, Nathaniel couldn't help but appreciate the beauty of the scene. Not even a murder of crows in the distance could distract him from the peaceful setting. While Nathaniel continued to survey the scene, he noticed when a figure stepped up next to Klaus looking like a small golden druid because of the gold-hooded tunic. "It is time to welcome our brother into the new life," said the gentle voice of Jeremy. "He has been liberated from the eternal prison and is finally free to roam to where and when his essence wishes. Let us escort him to the light and bid our silent farewells." After speaking those words, Jeremy stepped forth and placed a dried yellow rose on the bosom of the child. One by one, every figure stepped up, said a few quiet words, and put the flower next to the body. Last in line was Daniel. He had a hard time holding back his tears, but managed to kneel down next to the boy, kiss his cold hand, and whisper, "Sleep well, little brother." He then kissed the forehead of the boy and placed something beneath the child's hands. The dark began to turn to gloom, and the gloom woke into morning. The golden figure stood by, and once a pure ray of light touched the boy's skin, a fire awoke and began to grow around the delicate body. The sight was hauntingly beautiful, but amidst a crowd of golden cloth, a human hand held onto a vampire's shoulder in a silent display of kinship. On the ground, red stains became clearer as human and vampire tears combined in their sorrow. So that's a little bit to show that not all vampires go.
It's always time to go indie now.
Oh, and it's, by the way, it's always time to embrace vampires that do not sparkle, and it's always time to go indie now.